we've got to acknowledge that we have a very, very powerful voice together for good.
Hey everyone, welcome to another episode of I Know This Guy, the podcast where we dive deep into the lives of some of the most interesting people I know. Before we get started, please like and subscribe to I Know This Guy wherever you get your podcasts. By the way, my kids want me to say something about ringing a bell. What the hell's a bell?
So who's the guest for today's episode?
All right, so do you remember John Davidson?
Yeah, of course.
So this is the person he recommended, and it's Nate Eckman. He's got an incredible clothing line called ULT, and I don't know if you've checked it out, but it's really cool. Plus, he's one of the most creative guys I know.
Yeah, he sent over some of his work. I was pretty blown away.
Yeah.
Like the amount of stuff he's involved in is pretty phenomenal.
Yeah, so I can't wait to, start talking with him.
Yeah, let's dive in.
All right, Nate. So welcome to the podcast.
Yeah, I'm happy to be here. Thanks, guys.
It's pretty interesting. John Davidson was saying how he knows one guy I got to talk to, and something about Nacho Brothers or something like that. We got to get into that. Like,
yeah. Oh man, John Davidson's a good buddy of mine, and he lives in Dallas. I live in LA, and I love going to Texas. Anywhere in Texas, I think it's like you got to get barbecue. I know that's not an original thought. So to make it original, I was like, I love nachos. Can I have nachos in Texas 3 meals a day, breakfast, lunch, and dinner, and not just plain nachos, like barbecued nachos? Because I love barbecue. I love barbecue sauce. This is like all my favorite things. So I'm going to visit John, and by the time I see him for lunch, no, we had dinner that night. I had successfully had breakfast nachos, lunch nachos, and we were at some fancy place. And so I get like where they cut the steak like perfectly to the size of the tortilla, and they like dress it up real fancy. And then I was like, John, I've done it. I've successfully had breakfast, lunch, and dinner nachos. And so we started calling each other Bro Nacho. And we text each other stupid nacho memes all the time. And it's just our thing. And anytime I'm preparing nachos or eating nachos at a restaurant, it's like we can sense each other, like psychically connected through the nachos. So he knows I'm going to send him a picture. And we just been going back and forth with that kind of stuff. So, yeah, he's a rad guy, and to his credit, he is an extremely professional industry thought leader. We just happen to have a lot of other stuff in common. So,
right.
Nachos being one of the things. Yeah.
I got to try barbecue nachos. Some reason in Canada, at least in Ontario, Hayden, do you know of anybody that has really great barbecue?
No, they always go out of business within like
Well, isn't it? I mean, we talked about this before. I've been to Toronto, and it was cold. I got to say, it was pretty chilly. Being a West Coast California kid, like it was cold, and I'm like, I can't picture anybody outside with a smoker, preparing barbecue. Yeah. I remember I ordered an iced coffee, and they were like, "What? We don't make that. Like, don't you get it? It's freezing here." And I was like, "Okay, yeah, I'm gonna pick up on that." But yeah, I mean, even out here, like in LA, we have a couple pretty good barbecue places, but when you're really looking for some fantastic barbecue, I've explored my share of different cities around Texas, and so yeah, triple nacho day, barbecue everywhere. I mean, come on, it's a great part of the planet.
You can't beat that.
You can't beat it. Yeah.
We got to get into your backstory. So just, can you tell us a little bit about what makes Nate?
Gosh, well, I come from, A house of four siblings. I got two older brothers, a little sister. I grew up in a little beach town, Morro Bay, California. Pretty small, humble little surf and fishing town. Always loved playing video games, drawing, exploring, adventuring. And, I think I really started to know that I was different or unique, I guess, by the time as any young person, you start grappling with like, well, why did we exist and why are we here and where does this all mean? Where are we going? And my mom would drop me off at the library in the summer instead of drop me off at the pool. And I would just read as many books as I could get my hands on about philosophy and theology and like everything I could understand about diverse worldviews and different unique cultures. And I think that was a really early formative part of how I became really into the idea of culture and having a lot of purpose in my work and really wanting to participate in developing community and like having a brand that stands for something that has a commentary on like everything about existence and purpose and identity and all these types of philosophical things that I grappled with throughout my life and my adolescence and really helped form who I would become and went to study art and film and audio engineering and philosophy and painting and eventually found a creative outlet in marketing, which helped me utilize all of my diverse skills and interests and storytelling. And it was kind of atypical, I guess, going from art school to finding myself doing like marketing and advertising campaigns. But I think it was a way to embrace all those early formative years where I was really like obsessed with philosophy and I found creativity helped me communicate that and creativity helped me express myself and challenge myself. But it was really through being able to do these broad like national marketing campaigns that I had to professionalize that. I had to commercialize that. I had to settle myself into a role and into a career that I could take all of that type of thinking into my work. And I think that set me on my path. And I kind of revisited my love of video games very specifically, where I could get lost in the imagination of a world or explore a world or create identity in a world and create friendships in that world. And so I gravitated to other people like that, and I found them in video games, and I found them in the video game industry. And I was surrounded by very innovative, radical, progressive thinkers who were unafraid of taking risks and challenging themselves. And that type of environment really helped foster my ability to find a home for the different types of, say, ideological or conceptual types of things that I really weighed on me throughout my life. It gave me a focus for that, and I could put a job against that. I could put a career path in that, and an industry with other people that I could work with, and so I think all of that, really is just about identity and meaning and purpose, and I found a lot of that in philosophy, and I think that found its way through the arts, and the arts led me to marketing, and my love of video games kind of made sense of all that stuff, and I think that's still true today, still true decades later. Like,
You still have the passion.
yes, and the curiosity. I think that's like not assuming I'm have the answers, but I'm very, very curious and fascinated to discover and to learn and to be willing to adapt and grow and challenge yourself. And I find that, I find that in the games industry. I find that in the work I get to do with my own brand, and it's just continuously challenging yourself to be your best and being willing to discover what that means and to be open to critique from people you trust and respect. I just built my whole life that way, my personal life and my professional life. I've kind of built it on those types of principles.
So you went through school for marketing, and then when you graduated, where did you go?
Yeah, so I actually went. I actually throughout my geez, you'll love this. So I changed schools ever since I was a kid. I did homeschool, I did private school, I did public school, then I did homeschool again. Then I went to private college, then I went to art school, then I went to film school. I changed schools so much, and I was searching for what is my thing, what is the thing that's going to really connect with me, and I studied all these different art forms, and it really was what landed me in the world of marketing, that in the agency world in Los Angeles around lifestyle marketing, and really developing a deep love of the city and the culture of the city. And I use that in my work to find inspiration. And I'd say school really landed me in the agency world, doing marketing and advertising campaigns for automotive or mobile or beverage companies. And it was really after some time doing that where, as a young person, I was like, I'm a gamer. There's a huge audience of other gamers out there that we're not addressing. We're not speaking to them through any of these campaigns. And I was really, it weighed upon me that I wanted to have a whole dedicated division that could be focused on gaming. And that was really an opportunity space. And it was through taking that responsibility on and demonstrating that I could lead that category and develop it and make it profitable and make it grow, that I could work with the biggest game publishers in the world. And that few years of time proved itself to be very true. And I got to work with Riot and League of Legends and Microsoft, Xbox, and these types of large publishers with games that I loved, with people that I respect, and these large scale, whether it's arena events or, getting artwork in games that players can enjoy all around the world. Like, it showed me that things were possible. Like, if you just stuck to it and you just persisted and you weren't afraid to be vocal about an idea, that the idea itself could open up so many doors, and that you could find yourself kind of at the top of the mountain with kind of impossible meetings where you get to do the thing. Like, you get to have an idea, and the idea gets to become reality, and then you're creating realities for a lot of other people to enjoy. I think once you realize that life can be that way and that you can shape it, you start to never be able to look back. Like, it's impossible. It's impossible to go back. So you just keep going forward, and you find there's people like you out there who think that way and who encourage that way. And then you have teammates who join you in that way, and you move faster, you learn, you can move more efficiently. Like, yeah, but I mean, I'd say all of that level of ambition and curiosity it absolutely came out of from all the way from when I was a kid. And now I get to share that inspiration and passion, like you say, with my teammates, but also with my other industry leaders. And um, we get to challenge what this space can become and what gaming can mean to so many more people around the world in new ways. And I guess that's the fascinating part of the work that I'll never be able to shake it. I still show up every day, and that's what I'm trying to explore what that means for me every day.
And it's not work for you.
It's not. It's like gosh, I find that even when I get time to take a little breather, I always am like, oh man, like, I want to get back into the nature of the work, because the nature of the work is always about advancing an idea forward. And that never feels like work to me. It always feels like exciting discovery, and like, how far can this go? And I've never gotten sick of that, and it never feels like an obligation. It never feels like it's motivated out of anything other than like, how big can this idea get? how much more broad and the impact of it and developing it. And no, so it actually, it never feels like work to me, ever, actually.
Yeah, I love when that happens.
Yeah, I mean, you guys are having fun. I'm having fun on
Yeah.
here with you guys. So, yeah,
Yeah, Nate, I wanted to add something in there.
sure.
That switch from the arts over into marketing, was that like a willing switch, or were you like dissatisfied with staying in the arts and were searching for something?
Sure. Yeah. No, that's a really good question because I was studying, I went to study philosophy, and then I was unsatisfied with a room full of people who assumed they were right. And I just wanted to learn and discover. So then I switched into studio art, which was painting, sculpture, illustration. And then I studied photography, and I just didn't feel challenged enough. So I said, what's the most challenging art form and it was film. At that time, I was like, film has all of these things. It has design, it has managing talent, it has lighting, it has camera movements, it has art everywhere. So I went to film school, and I succeeded well in that. I, won some national awards and things like this. So I was pretty good at it, but then I was like, that's not enough. Like, what's more creative? And then it was like sensory, it was audio. So I enrolled in some audio engineering master's programs. And then it was the thing about marketing, which it sounds weird coming from a really creative type of person, but the marketing was actually the most creative medium for me at the time, because there was really high stakes. There was always these big brands. You're dealing with $1 billion brands and like these big national campaigns. There's so many variables. It's like this orchestra that you have to put together, and the complexity of it was almost like a puzzle game to me, and I love puzzle games. So you had to really manage like a ton of different things to pull together a successful marketing campaign. And so to me, it felt like taking all of my creativity and putting it in this medium. And then over time, like, I became frustrated with that, and I think entrepreneurship was really the next thing in line for me to continue to challenge myself. But yeah, I mean, it seems bizarre on paper when you're like, how does super idealistic philosopher art school kid get into advertising? It was a means for me to reach more people and to challenge myself with taking all of my different talents and putting it into one thing that I could be exceptional at. Like, that was kind of my thinking at the time.
So you're in business, you're working for these agencies. When did you cross over to fashion?
Yes. So because I was developing the marketing campaigns for the different video game publishers, a lot of my work was very art led. And so we'd create really cool artwork, and that would sometimes be in the game. Sometimes it would end up on fashion. And so there was this blend of like ways you could experience the game in real life, and you could wear the clothes and you could see the art in the game. So there was always this kind of hybrid of the way you could experience art and gaming in real life and on clothes. And I didn't really think about wanting to make a brand to address these things until many years later. I mean, it was like maybe a decade of kind of pursuing my interests within gaming and refining it over time to be like, from marketing to agency to consulting to creative marketing campaigns. Suddenly you're like, I can do this, and I can do this at a high level. I can work with the greatest game companies that are out there, but there's a limit to what I can do because they have a lot of rules. So I was like, if I'm going to ever really pursue my passion to the utmost extent possible, I have to take myself seriously, and I have to go on my own, create my own thing, and really embrace it in its totality, even though it's the unknown, even though you step away from, 10 years of having a very comfortable job and all these types of things and people paying you for your ideas, and you're just like, I've got to know where this goes, and the only way I'll know is if I take a risk on myself, if I bet on myself and I take myself seriously. So I mean, that's really where it started. That's where it kind of turned into where I've really created something for myself.
Is Alt your first brand?
Yes. Yeah. Yeah, yes, it is. Yeah, I think I tried my hand at I had my first bit of entrepreneurship was I was actually mastering music for different international pop artists because I loved audio mixing, all this, like it was like painting with sound. And I was trying to do that in addition to my full-time agency role. And then I was like, no, that's not going to work. And then I was like, well, maybe I'll create something else. And it really wasn't until feeling like Ult was so deeply personal. It felt like it started as almost like an artistic statement to myself that like I can do this. And it had very humble beginnings, but it was a night and day transition for me from kind of doing a lot of agency work where you're in the shadows. Nobody really knows who's doing it. It's just kind of they see the campaign, they see the big brands, but they don't know who's doing it. And I'd kind of gotten comfortable with that. And so the day we launched Ult, it was kind of like this unveiling of like, well, this is what Nate's doing now. So it was a crazy day. It was in Los Angeles. The LA Times covered it. All the heads of the different gaming companies were there, and it was maybe a small little private event for like 50 people. And it was really like I had to get up on stage for the first time, speaking publicly for the first time about something I just created and launched for the very first time. And it was like driving a car into a wall. It was like so radically different from anything I had done in my life up until then. And, fast forward, you're doing like 42 speaking engagements a year. But that first night, you're like, okay, I got to get up in front of people and tell them what I'm doing. And like, I remember that day very clearly because it just felt like I was departing from 10 years of what I had been doing to start something new. And there's, one of my staff members years later, he was like, hey, what is it like to be an entrepreneur? Like, what is it like? What does it feel like to start something? And I was like, you ever just like running full speed into the darkness? And you can't slow down. You're just getting faster and faster. And I was like, that's what it feels like. And he just looked at me like, well, I'm kind of terrified about what that means. But I guess that's part of it to me is like the exhilaration of there isn't a rule book waiting for me. Like there's not predetermined guidelines telling me what to do. There's no blueprint of architecture plans that I just inherited that's going to tell me what's next. It's like it's totally up to me. And before then, that's how my art, and to this day my art is that way. My personal experimental art is that way. Like there doesn't have to exist any parameters. And so taking that idea, putting it into the Ult brand, it was the beginning of a new period of my life, and I'm still smack in the middle of that, and like taking it as a medium to interact with the world, with the culture, with my fellow gaming audience and industry leaders. It's like it's my medium. It's like the paint that I use when I go to work on the canvas. It's what I've got in my tool set.
Yeah. I being an entrepreneur, I know what you're talking about, running in the dark, going faster, but for some reason I run into trees.
You're in the wrong part of town, buddy.
Yeah. I got to find that bloody field.
Yeah, man, mine's got like a whole downhill. I see it as like this downhill into this fog of darkness. And like when you were a kid and you just run down a hill full speed till your shoes fly off and you can't slow down and you're running out of breath and your lungs are like pulsing with ache, but it's like you're not going to stop. It's like a meteor like flying through the sky.
So all the designs that you made at the beginning, you did all yourself?
Yes, and that was a very interesting time in my life because you're starting a new company, you're separating yourself from all your comfort zones, you're discovering like, okay, how do I make clothes? How do I develop them? How do I build websites? And like, you don't have the comfort of a full agency at your disposal to go and just, hey, lean on people. So I did sit down and draw sketches, very much how I draw sketches to this day, and you learn to rely on your family or your close friends who you can trust, and that becomes your team, even without having a staff at that time. Like, you had to know how to do every part of the job, like from how's it made, designed, produced, manufactured, fulfilled, like every aspect of the whole chain you had to know intimately. And I think those, first releases taught me those lessons, and I can still rely on that knowledge and experience when I'm like, yeah, we might have a lot more resources and team members and things at our disposal, but you can always go back in your mind and be like, I know how to do this. I've done this. I've had to grind through all of the painstaking details to like create something. And it teaches you to really appreciate the craft a lot, and what dedication to quality means, and the respect of others that elevate that and bring their expertise into it. It just makes you appreciate the work. But yeah, having to design things alone um, is is not what it became over the subsequent years. Like, you develop a team and a staff. You have art directors and designers and people helping with production and tracking and logistics and ecom, and like you have, and marketing and social. You have all these people who are excellent, and um, but you do have to be the one to have an idea and to steward that idea into reality. And sometimes ideas can take years to actualize in their full potential. So you have to be the one to be responsible to those initial feelings of excitement. Like, you have to keep it, and you have to carry it with you and make sure it doesn't get lost, along the way.
I'm kind of interested in, okay, so now you've got the brand's taking off, you're bringing on new people. And then when you bring on somebody, how do you articulate the design or the way you want the shirt to be designed or whatever you're designing it for? Because you've got a very specific look to your designs. Now, how do
Mhm.
you get other people to translate that?
The real professional would say, I've got a 388-page style guide full of brand guidelines. It's essentially like, on one end, you could say, I've got a rule book. If you follow the rule book, you could do it. But that's not true, right? Because I think part of the brand's DNA is one of evolution and adapting and experimental ideas and new applications. And so, how do you capture that? A lot of it is, you have to develop trust-based relationships with your teammates, where you you can build a foundation together as people first, as humans first, and you can relate to one another, and you can share ideas, and you can mutually understand that, like, an idea is a collaboration or a synthesis, as I say. And it's really the meaning behind the triangle logo itself. Is it's a philosopher named Hegel and his idea of synthesis, where there's an idea here, and there's one here, and they create a third variable, or a point at which previously did not exist. And so if I'm working with the teammate, I'm one of those points, and my teammate's the other point, and I have an idea and they have an idea, and together, and only together, can we reach the third variable of a synthesized idea or a collaborative idea. So my design process is often extremely collaborative when I'm working with other people. And even if that's a big group or a outside design collaborator or creative person, it's built out of trust and being able to rely on one another to bring their best thinking. And then there's a nuance to you can't assume, just like those philosophy classes when I first started college, or being that kid in the library in the summer with the books. It was like, I can't assume I'm right. I've got to start with an open mind, but I'm going to bring my very best thinking, and I'm going to trust that my teammate is going to do the same, and we're going to learn and discover what that new idea is, and that new idea becomes the base of my next triangle, which is now challenging. How do we elevate that, and how do we synthesize that, and how do we continue to build and these ideas so that they're far more fascinating, awesome, cool, complex than we ever could have thought in the very beginning, you know? So I know that's a difficult thing to do, but it's one of trust and relying on each other. But really, like, as individuals, um, embracing your voice and not being afraid of what that is. And, you know, when I trust that my teammate or also has a big, bold voice, they know that I'm going to listen to that, and I'm going to process that, and I'm going to try to understand it. And together we could create something new that I didn't see coming. That's going to be really exciting. And it's going to be way more exciting because it's going to have aspects that are going to surprise me. And my favorite stuff is like the really, really cool, exciting moments when you're like, that's so awesome. I love that. And I think good ideas feel really familiar to you. Like anybody could have them, and they're close, and it's almost like it came out of your brain or their brain, and it's like you never, like, the good thinking is like really relatable. Yeah, design is like creating solutions and utility, but art is really the beginning for me. It's like it all comes out of the art.
Love it. Like how you explain that.
I'm sorry, I know I could have typed that into 380 pages.
There you go.
One of my buddies, he wrote a 388 page style guide, and I read it. And page 7, it had this a triangle, like an ascending triangle, and at the very top of his triangle was the word promise. And I talked to him about it. I said, "Hey, I read your guide. On page 7, you use the word promise." And he said, "You know what? You're the first person to ever identify that, and I'm really grateful." And so we developed that trust relationship. And then over time, my work challenged all of his rules in that guideline. And I remember he stopped one day and we were talking in my studio, and he was like, "You know, you're the only one we let do this." And I was like, "Let do what?" He was like, "Break the rules." He's like, "I write the rules, so I can't break my own rules. That'd just be weird." He's like, "But you can. You can break these rules. And I trust that your work, because you care so much and you're so passionate about it, you're going to bring good work. And it's going to be stuff we couldn't have seen coming. And that's going to be the most exciting stuff." And like, you know, beyond the products and the design, to me it's like those relationships that you build and those friendships that you build with guys like John Davidson, you know, guys like that. You know, that's really the rewarding part of entrepreneurship so far. Is like, yeah, you can always make more money, you can always go bigger, you can always do more elaborate, complicated stuff, but like, have you built friendships? Can you call people and rely on them? Can they call you and you'll show up for them? And that's why I did this show, because I was like, John's gonna, anything John asks me for help with, like, I'm gonna show up for him. And that's just a mentality that I think I want to see in my work, in my staff, in my team, in my industry. And, you know, so here I am.
So it's funny how we just talked about John because he mentioned during the podcast how he met you at a trade show. He really was impressed with all of your product, the design. I think he said it was the shoes that you had designed.
Yeah.
Yeah. But anyways, he was really impressed with how approachable you were, and you guys just formed this friendship. And I know that we talk about this a lot, the ability, not so much to be approachable, but it is being approachable, but it's building that network.
Hmm.
You know, how important is that network to you?
Oh my gosh. I still have my early formative friends that you can call upon and relate to each other. And I think being approachable is, and we can use John as an example, because it's almost like I use this thing of like it's like magnets in the dark, right? The magnets will find each other, even if they can't see each other, even if they can't anticipate when. But like-minded people who are willing and open, they seek each other out. There's a longing to find other people in the universe who think like you, who will acknowledge you, who will recognize what you're doing. And I think that lends itself really well to networking. I remember at that event really clearly, I had just stepped barely off the stage and John was like ready, with like bubbling over with excitement. And it's hard to turn that away. It's hard to be like, yo, dude, I gotta go. I gotta get in my car. Like, I got stuff to do. Like, peace out. But he's had these big bright eyes, and he was just like, God, I have so much to talk to you about. Like, blah blah blah. And I'm like, that's awesome. It's exciting, getting to meet people, new people, have new experiences, learn from them. It's inspiration to me. So, and the benefit is like, yeah, you can build friendships. You can build good business based off of good relationships. And in my experience, good relationships and good business go hand in hand. You can trust each other, you can communicate openly. So, yeah, networking is like, I'm enthusiastic to meet and discover other talented people who care like I do. And they might be in parallel crossover industries, but I'm always like excited to learn. And I think that's what makes networking exciting. And that's why John and I have become quite good friends. And, was a lot of mutual respect for him as a professional. Any grown dudes like memeing each other about nachos, that's because we're friends. And that friendship came out of, a mutual curiosity to learn how our industry could be better. And he had aspects of his professional career that really were interesting and complementary to mine. And so it was a very natural development of our friendship and of our professional ability to support each other and to collaborate together. But yeah, networking is huge. Like, I could sit here and gripe that, like, doing 42 speaking engagements a year and traveling across the country to go on stage for 15 minutes is a pain, but it's also an honor. And it's a responsibility that I take really seriously, because the value that I get every time I come home, even though it sucks to be away from your kids and your wife and like be away from your home and your comforts, you come back every time, you're like, I met this cool person. And I wouldn't have known they existed unless I was there. And I met them, and man, there's some cool stuff we could do together. And I always know that's going to happen because I'm open-minded, I'm willing, and I share in that longing to challenge myself in new ways. And a lot of times challenging yourself in new ways means you're going to have to meet new people who think differently than you, who have radically progressive ideas that will inspire you in new ways. Hopefully hopefully that helps. I think gamers too in particular are like really excited about relating to one another, because we share a passion, and connecting with each other on that level is the foundation for everything. It's like, all right, cool, we got that on lock. Like, we all love video games immensely and what's going to happen with our industry. So let's do something fantastic together about it, is a good frame of mind to kind of enter a networking opportunity.
Yeah, the other thing about networking too is, okay, I meet you now, and I'm talking about you and John. Now your networks open up to one another as well. So he asks you a question you don't know. What do? Tap into your network.
Yeah.
So it just spreads and spreads and spreads and spreads. It's great, but a lot of people don't understand or don't go to a lot of events. For me, being in my business, I have to go to a lot of events. I might get, I do get education, but at the same time, I'm not there really to get that much education. I'm there to meet people, and just incredible people every time. you meet somebody, and if you mind map it, I don't know if you've ever done this or thought about it, but I go back 3 or 4 years ago or 5 years ago and who I met, and then this led us to these 3 people who led us to these. It's incredible what you can do, just by reaching out. For me, I'm not talking about a friend request on Facebook, but actually knowing somebody, and getting to know them, and not just, gimme, but sharing information and becoming friends.
Yeah. And a lot of those, like 10 years later, like you said, you can look and be like, I remember, like, I was just on the phone with one of my other friends who he went on to be a huge executive at PepsiCo, and then he went on to be a huge executive at Foot Locker and Mountain Dew and NASCAR. It's like, I remember the day we met at South by, and we're both kids, and we're both just trying to figure out cool stuff to do with this brand. And fast forward now, it's like I called him for when I was on the beach with my family on the weekend, and I'm like sharing pictures of the kids, and I want to hear about what he's doing in life. And it's like, it's more important to me that he's happy and that he can share his joy and I can share my joy. And I know, like, if he asks me for help in his work, I will help him. And if I ask him for help, he knows that he's going to, we will show up for each other. And I just texted John, like, when I was talking to him earlier, I was like, man, you're going to do fine. You're going to do awesome. And here's why: because so many people in our industry have come to really know you and like you and trust you because of the networking and because of the outreach. And you've built a lot of trust. So when you show up and you raise your hand and be like, hey, I've got an idea, but I'm going to need your help. I'm like, John, you're going to find everybody is going to want to help you because they like supporting good people and they like seeing good people win, and the more you're conditioned in your mind to know that's true, the more ambitious you are, the more confident you are, the more you're willing to go after something that seems completely ridiculous and out of your reach. Like, you're just going to go after it, and that your friends, your family, and your close teammates will be there to support you and to help you figure stuff out, and that's what makes it possible.
Hey there, guys and gals. That concludes part 1 of our interview with Nate Eckman. Make sure to tune in next time to hear the rest of the interview. As always, make sure to subscribe to the podcast wherever you listen to your podcasts. It keeps you up to date with everything I Know This Guy and helps us grow the show. See you next time.